let's talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling's biggest show of the year, live from the Tokyo Dome, Wrestle Kingdom 12. I got to see the pay-per-view on New Japan World, and I wanted to give you my thoughts on this show. Now, with New Japan Pro Wrestling, it's something that if you are trying to get somebody out there into New Japan, or if you have not watched New Japan Pro Wrestling, this is the perfect show for you, because this was one of the most balanced wrestling shows as far as variety goes that I've ever seen. You got a little bit of everything you could want. You had huge, long, epic matches. You had psychology in some matches. You had, hardcore style. You had strong style. You had like realistic MMA style. You had high flying. The show really gave you everything you could want out of a wrestling show. Like every match was different. Every match felt different. Every match was worked differently. And it was just there's so much variety here. So you're guaranteed to like something on this show. Now, the show was a double main event. 2 huge matches. Chris Jericho, in his first match outside of WWE in 2 decades, wrestled Kenny Omega in the Alpha versus Omega no disqualification match for the IWGP United States Heavyweight title. And the main event, Kazuchika Okada, 2 years now, almost 2 years as champion, defending against Tetsuya Naito. Now, they had some big shoes to fill, because last year's Tokyo Dome show was headlined by Okada versus Omega, and that was one of the best matches in the history of the business. Some say it was the best match ever in the history of wrestling. I'm not kidding. People have said that. Dave Meltzer broke his own star rating scale and gave it 6 stars, which is just absurd. So they had some huge shoes to fill this year to top that match. And I will say this, Okada versus Naito was a fun main event, but it did not top the Omega versus Okada match from last year. But it's one of those things where it's almost impossible to top, but they actually went ahead and did it during their rematch in the summertime. That being said, though, Naito and Okada had a really fun match with, I thought the match kind of started out a little bit slow, but it really picked up near the end. There were some great near falls, and when you watch New Japan live, it's one of those things where you have to watch these shows live because you don't know what's going to happen. And I know that sounds obvious, but when you see these near falls and you see these moves and these reversals and you think the match could actually be over, once you familiarize yourself with the New Japan moveset and what the guys can do, they really get you. And there were some epic near falls by the end of this match. It was just a really, really great match. I don't know if it's the best one out of these 2 guys, but it was a worthy main event for the Tokyo Dome. And Okada retains, and who knows what is next for Okada. I mean, I really don't know who's going to face him next, because it could be Kota Ibushi, it could be somebody else, but he is still going on that incredibly long title reign, and they've thrown everybody against him, and he has not been dethroned yet. And I'm okay with this, because even though it may have been Naito's night, Okada is the man right now in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he's my favorite wrestler in the entire company. Now, the co-main event was something that New Japan almost never does. If you're a fan of New Japan, you know this. If you're not a fan, New Japan Pro Wrestling rarely does these no DQ matches with, tables and chairs and whatnot, but they did it here. Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega for the IWGP US title. That was the co-main event of the evening. What an amazing match. This was the best, in my opinion, this was the best Chris Jericho match since the Shawn Michaels series back in 2008 in WWE. Jericho reinvented himself yet again for this feud. He brought sort of like a wacky hybrid of like 2009 Best in the World Jericho mixed with this raggedy kind of, I guess you could say broken Matt Hardy style, mixed with sort of like Mickey Rourke from The Wrestler. He had that kind of hair, and he's starting to get older, the grizzled veteran thinking that he is the Alpha and that he can beat the Omega. And that was the promotion behind this match, Alpha versus Omega. What an amazing match. I mean, these guys, it was 34 minutes. It was unbelievably epic. They had a spot where, the only thing that was kind of wonky is there was a spot where Kenny Omega knocks Jericho off a top rope through a table, and you could tell he kind of dove back onto it. Little things like that were, whatever. But Jericho beating up the ring boys at ringside, and then needing their towels was freaking hilarious. The fact that Jericho survived a one-winged angel by grabbing the ropes was shocking. I thought that would be the end of him. And the finish came when Kenny Omega hit the one-winged angel on a chair, which was absolutely brutal. And some are saying that this is going to be Chris Jericho's last truly epic match. I don't know. I mean, we don't know if he's coming back to New Japan. He might show up at the Royal Rumble for all we know, but what an amazing performance by Jericho, and what a great performance by Kenny Omega. It looks like Omega and Okada are still going to be pushed to the top two guys, and I'm perfectly fine with that because they are pretty much the two best in the company. Now, that to me was the best match on the card, but it was not my favorite. My favorite match on this whole pay-per-view was the four-way for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. Will Ospreay defeats Marty Scurll, Hiromu Takahashi, and Kushida. This was absolutely insane. Marty Scurll came out dressed like a peacock. He went for the fingers like he normally does. Will Ospreay did some of the most unbelievable moves. The high flying in this match is literally like on another level. Like when you watch this match, right, and you're a WWE fan, it quickly hits you that this is what 205 Live should be, but never will be because they never are allowed to really work, you know, this style. I mean, we saw moves here that have never been seen before. There were sequences that were admittedly a little bit too choreographed, but just incredible. There were several times where they legitimately fooled me into thinking that, you know, someone was going to get the pinfall. And there were so many great little plot threads in this match. Like, there's a part in the match where, because it's a four-way, you know, pins can be broken up, Marty Scurll takes some tape and actually ties Takahashi to the banisters at ringside, like the guardrails, so he can't get in and interfere in the pinfalls. Like, that was incredible, and it actually wound up almost costing him the match during that point, which it did later on. I mean, he lost the match anyways, but at that point they teased he might actually lose. You know, Kushida was just an absolute beast in this match. There were so many insane sunset flip power bombs, and just Will Ospreay's on another level, in my opinion, and this match pretty much showed it. And here's a guy who I think deserves to be the junior heavyweight champion. I mean, this guy's worked his ass off since he started, and he is one of the best high flyers in the entire business, and I wonder if WWE would ever sign him. If I were him, I would stay away from WWE because they don't treat their cruiserweights very well. If you want to see real junior heavyweight cruiserweight action, you gotta watch New Japan. Now, the other big main event besides those three, as far as like big profile matches, was for the IWGP Intercontinental title, which is Hiroshi Tanahashi, the John Cena of the company, the franchise player, has been there for so long, against Jay White. They repackaged Jay White and kind of made him this sort of wacky, quasi like 80s 90s heel, where he's kind of like this, I don't know how to really describe it. His whole gimmick is that he's the switchblade, and this match was a huge match for him because this was his do or die, and I thought that the match was really good considering the problems that Tanahashi's had when it comes to injuries. The dude is banged up, and as a result of that, the match, you know, there were parts of the match where he was a little bit wonky, a little bit off, but that's because the dude is injured, and I was surprised that Tanahashi retained, considering that he is injured. He's going to need some surgery very soon, but he still went out there and performed to the best of his abilities, and it really surprised me he was able to hit not only high fly flows, but from the top rope to the outside. I mean, he was really doing things that were, you know, impressive for a guy who's hurt. Not to mention that with they had a spot in the match where he went to the outside and he wound up hurting his knee, so they incorporated the knee injury into the storyline here with Jay White working over the knee, and Tanahashi, of course, his rebuttal was he's going to work over Jay White's knee. Really huge match for Jay White, the biggest of his entire career, and I think he did a decent job. Don't know if it was really a star-making performance. I don't see him being a main event guy just yet, but he's definitely on his way. He is definitely on his way, and it was enjoyable, but it wasn't anywhere close to the caliber of Tanahashi's previous Tokyo Dome matches. Forget it. I mean, the dude's banged up. Maybe next year he'll be in better shape, but the dude's just roughed up. Then we have, earlier in the card, I want to go over some of the other matches. Hiroki Goto against Minoru Suzuki for the Never Openweight Championship, hair versus hair match. This was, again, very different style here. If you've never seen Minoru Suzuki wrestle, he has a hybrid sort of MMA strong style sort of, again, in-ring style, and his moves all look very, very real, and that's kind of where he's from. I mean, he has a legitimate MMA background, but there's a spot in the match early where he puts a chokehold on Hiroki Goto, and he's knocked out cold. And I feel like he could have won right here. And that's one thing about Minoru Suzuki matches that do kind of annoy me, is that there's usually, not all the time, but there's usually spots where it looks like he's got the match won that he goofs off. Like he doesn't get the pinfall. And there was a spot here where he put this really tight looking choke on Goto and almost knocked him out, but then goofed off and didn't get the pinfall because he wanted to hurt him more. Like he just, that annoys me when you do that so much. Like, you know, your character development, bro, you got to stop doing that. But the match itself was great. There was some interference here as well. Goto ends up winning the match, and Minoru Suzuki, being Minoru Suzuki, would not allow Goto to shave his head. He took the razor himself and shaved his own head, which I thought was very, very cool and very in character of Minoru Suzuki. But again, very different match. Very different from everything else. Then they had the tag team titles. The Killer Elite Squad, Davey Boy Smith Jr. and Lance Archer, otherwise known as, you know, Harry Boy, D.H. Smith, whatever, the son of the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, versus Los Ingobernables de Japón, Evil and Sonata. I was not a huge fan of this match. It wasn't bad. It was just a little bit lower tier from everything else in the card. The Killer Elite Squad pretty much beat the crap out of Evil and Sonata the entire match, or at least not the entire match, but for the first half. You know, they just went in there and just destroyed them, and it was... I understand the psychology and the story they were telling. It was definitely different in that, you know, Evil and Sonata had to fight back from nothing to win, and they certainly did do that, but I think that the match started to drag a bit. I feel like they had too much heat for too long, and it really seemed like, okay, like, when is this going to pick up? Like, when are they going to make a comeback? And they had little comebacks here and there, but it was almost like a part of a match. Like, it was like the middle part of a match versus a full match. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it was a letdown compared to everything else in the show, because everything else was amazing. So, the show opened with the Young Bucks versus RPG 3K. Great opener. Wacky Young Bucks action, super kicks, high flying, Meltzer drivers, everything you expect from the Young Bucks. You know, if you've never seen the Young Bucks before, here's a team that at one time I completely despised, because I thought they were everything I hate about wrestling. Spot monkey guys who do flips and don't really matter. But as I got to kind of watch more of them and understand them, you're not supposed to take the Young Bucks too seriously, and you're supposed to watch them as more of like a, you know, they actually have psychology in their matches. It's just that it's hard to see it because of how much stuff they put into their matches. There's so many moves, so many things in the match. This was just supposed to be a hot opener to get the crowd into it, and it definitely was. Now, there was a pre-show match, which was the New Japan Rumble, which is always fun. They bring out the legends like Tiger Mask, Taka Michinoku, Satoshi Kojima, Yuji Nagata was in this, and they kind of jobbed them out. Liger was in it. That's one thing I didn't like. Like, they have these legends in there, and they have wacky spots and lots of comedy. It was a lot of comedy. But I didn't like the fact that sometimes these legends end up getting pinned too easily, because this is like basically a Royal Rumble, but you're allowed to do pinfalls. And I feel like these guys would be more protected if it did the over-the-top rope thing versus just doing the pinfalls. You know, it was good, but it was just kind of like, I just personally feel they should protect some of these guys. You know, not all of them, because some of them are legitimately, like, done, but, you know, most of them. Also on the card, there was a gauntlet match for the Never Openweight 6-Man Tag Team Championship. This was okay. Probably my least favorite match on the card. There was some good stuff here, but I thought it just dragged on a bit too long, and I like the idea of them doing a 6-man gauntlet. Like, basically, it's 2 teams of 3 guys. Then when one team loses, the next team comes in, sort of like a survival thing, like in a video game. And then the last team there is going to be, you know, last team that's going to eliminate is going to be the winner. It was fine. I just didn't think it was that great, and some of the stuff seemed a little bit rushed, so I didn't like it too much. Then the last match I want to talk about, which I thought was amazing, is Cody Rhodes with his wife Brandy versus Kota Ibushi. Cody Rhodes, such a great character. He's totally reinvented himself from WWE. His match with Kota Ibushi was really, really fun. Probably my favorite Cody match in New Japan that I've seen so far. You know, Kota Ibushi has a very different style from Cody Rhodes, and this match was really like a hybrid, high-flying technical. That's what this was. You know, Cody hit a really awesome and really scary crossroads from the top, like on the apron to the floor, and it was scary. Like, this thing was freaking scary. Kota Ibushi could have had his neck twisted. You know, that was crazy. There was an awesome spot where his wife pretended to be hurt so Cody could hit him from behind. You know, classic 80s heel heat here. I just love Cody and what he's become, you know, outside of WWE. And Kota Ibushi won, which tells me that Ibushi's probably going to be challenging for either Will Ospreay's, junior heavyweight title, or possibly the Intercontinental, or possibly the IWGP, because I for sure thought Cody was going to win this match because he's the dude who kind of seems to be in it for the long run, but Ibushi won the match, so I'm thinking they have plans for him going forward in New Japan. Overall, I had so much fun watching this show. If you've never seen New Japan, this is your perfect chance to watch it because it's a perfect entry into what they are. It's on NJPWWorld.com. $10 a month it costs for that service. You get unlimited shows. It's like WWE Network. And that's the place to watch this pay-per-view. It was basically 5 hours or so long. It was their WrestleMania. Tremendous production value too. Tremendous entrances. Just huge and awesome. And let me know what you think if you saw the pay-per-view. What was your favorite match on the show? There was nothing I hated here. It was just a great show from top to bottom. And probably one of the most consistent wrestling shows and with variety that I've ever seen. Thank you, and I'll talk to you guys in the comments.